Pulling my leg. It's like, don't you know what I've done and how old I am, and I've got kids and I've got a career and on and on and on. But God made me realize that He wanted me to not just be a forecaster, but also to be a pastor, even though the first 25, 30 years of my life were pretty much a complete disaster. And I mentioned the story is not exactly the same. You can take out the part about a wealthy father and an estate. My folks were both high school dropouts. They struggled paycheck to paycheck. They both worked really hard. My dad had a very difficult physical labor job, outdoors in the extremes of weather, and usually worked 2 or 3 jobs. And my mom, among other things, was a waitress at a truck stop for 25 cents an hour plus tips with 4 kids at home. But they loved us, and they made sure we had food and clothing, and they took us to church and got us involved in Sunday school. They taught us about God and Jesus, the difference between right and wrong, to stand up for those who were hurting, to help the poor, to share the little we had with anybody who had less. I can't tell you how many times my mom would come home at night from the truck stop with a 16-year-old runaway girl who'd been riding across country with some strange trucker, and my mom brought her home and how to make a long-distance call. In those days, that was a lot of money. So I knew right from wrong, and it was a huge treasury of wealth that I had poured into my early life, but I got to a certain age and I wanted out. I thought I wanted to be part of the cool crowd, and church didn't seem cool at all, and I pretty much ran away from church in my early teens. I was probably 12 or 13. I started to drink and party on the weekends and began living a life that shocked my parents, and they didn't know 10% of it. I'd hear, we didn't raise you to act this way. But I could have cared less about them. All I was interested in was me. And by the time I graduated from high school, if I didn't have 2 or 3 beers in me by 6 o'clock, I'd have a raging headache. But that was okay, because that just reminded me it's time to get to the bar and catch up. And 2 or 3 turned into 10 or 12. And I'd work all week in a warehouse, get paid on Friday, and have it all partied away by Monday morning, and then borrow my way to the next payday. And pot was a big thing back then, and what started as a little bit here and there for fun turned into my preferred way and eventually became a full-blown addiction. I have a lot of problems with the way that newscasters and others on TV these days, when they talk about the bills to legalize marijuana and act like it's so harmless, how they all chuckle and smile and act like it's a joke, and it's not. It was a horrible, horrible time in my life. Now, I was always able to function well enough. I wasn't high 24/7, although I would have preferred to have been. I paid my own way through college, and I started a fairly successful career in radio as an on-air top 40 DJ, and on the outside, it seemed fine. I was moving up, and it seemed like I was doing well in life, but on the inside, I was swirling down the drain faster than anybody would have ever imagined. And by the time I came to work here in New Mexico in 1983, I had a job that required me to travel from Santa Fe and Albuquerque back and forth about 150 times a year. And if I didn't have 2 joints for the trip up and 2 for the trip back, I couldn't even imagine what I was going to be. That's how bad my addiction was. I couldn't stand up in front of even a small group of people and do a presentation if I was just myself. And no matter what I had, it wasn't enough. I had a beautiful wife, but I always wanted more women on the side. I made a real good living, but I secretly took $100 bills and envelopes almost every week from the record companies, and I traveled all over the country at their expense to go see concerts because they wanted me to play their songs. And I ate at fancy restaurants with whatever I wanted to eat or drink and their credit cards, and I was introduced to cocaine and crazy, crazy people that I thought I admired. And at the time, if you would have asked me, I would have just said, yeah, life's a party and I'm invited to most of them. And I had no clue that my party was about to come to an end, because no matter whatever I put into my life, women, alcohol, drugs, I was never satisfied. I always wanted more. And I didn't realize it at the time, but the problem was easy to diagnose. I had a hole in my soul, and whatever I poured in ran right out as soon as the high was over. And I'd laugh and I'd joke and I'd make fun of everybody else, but on the inside I was dying. And I destroyed my marriage. I hurt the people who loved me the most, including my parents and my then 3-year-old son. I lost 3 really good jobs in a period of over just 2 years, and I found myself at the end of the road, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I was actually diagnosed as being clinically depressed and put on doctor meds. I didn't want to get out of bed. I saw no reason to go on living. I was seriously suicidal for a long period of time. I thought long and hard about ending my life over and over. But something made me hang on, and I think it was my little boy at the time. I couldn't bear to leave him alone, even as screwed up as I knew that I was, and I didn't realize it. But God was using him to watch out for me out in the wilderness where I'd been hiding for 15 years. Like the father in our story who saw his son far off in the distance and raced to bring him home. The father had been looking and watching and waiting for his son, for any sign that he would ever return. And when he showed that sign, the father went out and grabbed him and pulled him back in. And that's just what Jesus did to me. Towards the end of that long, selfish, crazy period, I felt like I was having my face rubbed in the gravel day after day. But I still didn't even have a clue that God was what I was missing. And when I look at what I have now with my wife of almost 27 years, our 4 children, a job that I enjoy, these ministries that God has placed me in, I'm amazed at the goodness and the grace that God has gifted me with in such abundant ways, in ways that I don't deserve at all. Just like the son that got the ring and the robe and the fatted calf. And I'm so glad that I didn't, in my life, that I just made it through one more day, and then one more, and one more, because I had no clue all of the wondrous things that God had in store. I was 33 then, and I'm 27 now. Oh, I'm 30. Sorry, 30. Well, I'm 35. That's how long I've been a believer. I was born again, and since I came home to Jesus and was welcomed back into the family by both my earthly father and my heavenly one, his son, Jesus Christ. And for those of you who are here tonight that are parents, you know, they're so sweet and they're so lovable when they're little, and then they turn into teenagers. And oh man, Mark Twain used to say when your kid turns 12, you should put him in a barrel, put the lid on, and just leave a little hole to feed him. And then they used to say when he turns 17, plug up the hole there where you feed him for a few years. But parents, I tell you what, no matter what happens with your kids, no matter what age they are, NEGU, never, ever give up on your kids. Even your adult children who've run away from God, even if they've done it before and come back and they run away again. My mom and dad prayed for me for years without seeing any fruit, any hope. But thanks to them and our gracious God, today I'm blooming away. I catch myself doing that. My brother passed away from a meth addiction. His son became a meth addict at the age of 15. And we tried and tried and tried, and we had to hide away. Got to the point where his mom couldn't let him know where she was living, couldn't let him know her phone number. He got busted on a big dope charge last year. He got put in jail for a long, long period of time, and while he was in county jail waiting the federal sentence, they'd sent him into the Salvation Army faith-based program, and he found the Lord. And he's got a long time to serve, but he writes me 10-page letters that are homework, because I've got to go look up the answers that he's asking questions about in Scripture. And it's just beautiful. So we can't ever give up. Nobody is a lost cause. And you know, we have to, when people come back, we have to treat them the way that we were treated when we came back. I'm such an admirer of Pastor Mike and the U-Turn for Christ program. It's such a blessing for us to work with them, not just with Beds for Kids, but they've gotten really involved in some of our Bible studies, because these guys just can't get enough Bible studies in a week. So they come up to New Covenant and study with us in addition to all the stuff they do with Pastor Ray at Calvary Chapel Southwest. And our guys love it. And these are a lot of guys that are technicians and engineers at Sandia Laboratories, but they get so much out of the guys from U-Turn. And I know the guys from U-Turn get the same from them. We take them along to to our men's retreats and things like that, and it's such a partnership. And I want to finish up with the last part of the scripture, because a lot of times at church it's kind of skipped over. And to me, a lot of it is the most important